Hey folks, this is Milan, the LSAT tutor. Thanks for checking out my video. And in this video, we'll be talking about the LSAT study schedule and what the best practices are for setting up the schedule, prep schedule. This is part one. There's another video where I go into more detail for a standard schedule, so make sure to take a look at that one as well. All right, so to give you a brief overview, we're going to be talking about your starting point, where you're starting, your goals, what are your goals, and how do you get there. Now, to basically give you the main point of the video, to sum up the video, what we're going to be talking about is that developing a study schedule basically means creating a schedule that will allow you to adequately prepare, given your goals and your starting point. And a quick reminder before we jump into it, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me. And you can check out my site. I've got the links below um, for a ton more articles and videos, as well as 20 hours, more than 20 hours of completely free LSAT prep that covers the fundamentals. All right, so let's talk about our starting point. So what is your diagnostic score and what do you need to work on? So basically, starting point is a score that you're going to get on your diagnostic when you take the diagnostic test, and then what that tells you about your weak areas. So looking at it a little bit more in depth, with a little starting point icon here, starting with your diagnostic. And by the way, the diagnostic is just a LSAT that you take under test conditions without having any prep whatsoever. This is just to see where you're starting at. So you take it, your initial diagnostic score is generally going to fall into one of three categories. It's going to be low, which is up to the mid 130s, mid, so from there to the high 140s, or high diagnostic, which is really anywhere in the 150s and above. A lower score generally means that you will need to do a more comprehensive review of the materials. You're going to have to cover a bit more. And a higher score means that you may be able to focus your studies on specific areas, the ones where you're weak. And in particular, if you've only managed to finish parts of the reading comprehension and logical reasoning on the diagnostic, that usually indicates that you need to work on your more fundamental reading capacities. Now, although most students need to study all sections of the test, it is common to find that you're weaker in some areas as opposed to others. For example, many students find that the analytical reasoning or the game section is a difficult section for them at first, but it's actually one of the sections that you can improve on the most with practice. Yeah, and just with respect to that, targeted preparation becomes actually even more important when you're already performing well in one or more sections of the test. And this basically means that you're getting really fewer than five questions wrong in that section. So if that's the case, you may not need to spend as much time studying those stronger areas yours. Okay, now with respect to your goals. So what's your target score and what is that going to mean for your prep? Basically, you need to know what score you're shooting for, and then you need to know how that impacts the timing. So looking at our little goal icon here, you need to know what the requirements are for the law schools you're interested in. So if you're aiming for a top tier law school or you want to get scholarships, you'll need to have a higher LSAT score. I mean, these schools receive a lot of applications, and a high score can help you stand out. So what you need to do is you need to research the schools you're interested in, and you can find out and find out their score ranges. You can do that. Just you can simply Google that. You can go to the school's website. You can get in touch with their admissions office. And I actually recommend getting in touch with the admissions offices. They're there to help you. They're there to get you money, but they're there to help you. Timing is also important, and that's because most law schools use rolling admissions, which means that they review applications as they're received, and they'll admit students until the class is filled. So this means that it's generally better to apply early, as you'll be considered for admission before spots start to fill up. And ideally, you should aim to take the LSAT by late fall and apply by December of the year before your target entry date. So now it's 2024. If you want to go to 2025, get your LSAT done by the end of 2024, by late fall, and get your applications in by the winter, by December of 2024 or 2025. But If you have to choose applying later with a higher score, so let's say you don't do as well, prep, you get a higher score, applying later with a higher score is usually better than applying earlier with a lower score. Now, with that in mind, preparing takes time and effort. The more points you need to get to your target score, the more time you'll need. You need to learn a lot of material and you need to develop the skills that you need to do well on the test. The LSAT is a skill test. Like any skill, practice is essential. The more practice tests you take, the better you'll get at applying the skills that you need for the test. And to get a high score, you need to put in a lot of practice. So, that being said, what's the proper way to prep? How do you approach the material? How do you approach the study sessions? Okay, so what is our path to success? So, first, you want to focus on learning individual concepts through reading and through exercises. And then as you progress, you keep reviewing what you've learned and you add more concepts to your studies. So once you have a good grasp of a concept, practice applying what you've learned slowly. And remember, the goal isn't to get as many right as possible when you're practicing. It's not you're not trying to do well, get everything right in your exercise sets. It's important to understand what you're looking for in the questions and how to approach them before you try to solve them, before you try to get all of them right. So when you've covered all the concepts in the question types, when you've done all of that, then typically it's more beneficial to start by practicing individual sections rather than diving straight into full-length tests. Now, your individual study sessions can fit your overall schedule, focusing on specific areas of the LSAT or combining different areas. You can do different things in a particular study session, but it's important not to neglect any section of the test, I apologize, for too long. So you can focus on just specific things, but you want to make sure to cover all parts of the test that you've learned on a weekly basis. So for example, in my experience as a tutor, I focus on games with students initially for a couple of weeks. However, when we move on to learning arguments, I make sure that they continue practicing games and that they're going over that. And on top of that, you need to be organized. Now, organizing your study time involves two key aspects: planning your schedule and adopting best practices for each study session. So to start, you want to plan your schedule with a big picture perspective or a big picture framework, and then a more detailed perspective. Begin by outlining your study plan in general over the course of a couple of months, and then you want to go into more detail with a weekly schedule. So it's important actually to be consistent as well with your study habits. So try to study on the same days and times because creating a routine will help you stay disciplined and focused. If you just do it at the same time every day, you're going to end up doing it. However, obviously, you can be flexible with the routine. If something comes up, and you also want to adjust your sessions to allocate more or less time to specific areas you're covering based on your progress. And I'll go over this in a lot more detail in the next video, so make sure to take a look at that. To maximize your efficiency and concentration during your study session, you want to adopt best practices. Basically, that means create a study environment that minimizes distractions, so that you can have as maximum focus. And you want to begin each study session by centering yourself, setting the right mindset for effective learning. So I show my students a couple of basic meditations for relaxation and motivation. And at the end of your session, you want to take some time to recap and review what you've studied. And I actually have a couple of videos and articles on this as well, where I go into detail about study sessions and in particular, preparing and meditating, which I found very helpful. All right. So to recap, your diagnostic scores generally range from the 130s to the 150s, and most students will need to cover all three sections, even though some sections might be weaker than others. With respect to your target score, you need to be mindful of the school and the timing. And your prep material will be where you learn your concepts, get your exercise sets, work through it without neglecting any part of the test, and make sure to be organized and effective in your sessions. Okay, like I said, I've got another part for setting up a proper study schedule where I go into some more detail with the specifics to a study schedule. So make sure to check out that video. And as I said, if feel free to check out my site. I've got other videos and other blog posts. And I also have the over 20 hours of completely free LSAT prep that covers the fundamentals. So hope this video helped, and thanks for checking it out.